Welcome to the Social Bee podcast with your host, Louise Brogan. Every week, Louise will be bringing you a podcast all about women entrepreneurs, talking about their challenges, their goals, and inspiring you to either start your own business or grow the business you have. Visit www.socialbeeni.com to join our community and pick up some lovely freebies to start marketing your business online today.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Social Bee podcast. So you will know, if you're listening and you're a long-time listener, this is episode 101. So we are in our second centennial of podcasting. Yay! Thank you so much for staying with me if you have been listening for a while. And I would love to get some feedback from you on the podcast. And I'd also love to hear from you in terms of reviews on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And if you leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it out on the Social Bee podcast, and you can give a little shout out to your business and tell us what it is that you do. That would be super. So this week on the podcast, I want to talk about the thing that will set you apart on LinkedIn. Now, if you've been on LinkedIn recently, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to start making crazy videos or to start telling everybody about your personal life. That is not what I mean. What I mean is when you go to LinkedIn, if you are like 99% of the people who are using LinkedIn, you probably have created your profile, kind of uploaded what looks like your online CV, and then you scroll through. And you possibly are liking the occasional post, but you've never posted a status update and you never leave any comments and you've never written an article. So I would love for you to listen to this podcast and to feel inspired to actually go and do some posting on your LinkedIn profile. Now, before you do that, of course, it is important to get your profile set up properly so that when you do start posting and you do start engaging in conversations on LinkedIn and someone clicks on your profile, that it leads them down a path to want to connect with you or possibly find out more about you. So absolutely, that is your first step. But once you have your profile set up properly, the next step is to actually start creating content posting on LinkedIn. So you can do this by posting status updates. You can write articles. You can upload video. If you are one of the people who has LinkedIn Live, you can even go live on LinkedIn. I don't have the live option. And I think actually, I haven't seen too many live videos. Whenever LinkedIn Lives first started, a lot of people went a bit crazy and started doing lots and lots of LinkedIn Lives. And that seems to have waned a little bit. I'm not sure that it works for me necessarily because, I don't know, I'm just not sure it's that kind of platform. But, fair play. If you are organized and you have a message that you want to deliver and you've planned it out, then certainly live video will work on LinkedIn. What doesn't necessarily work is people just jumping on while they're walking down the street. It's not Facebook. And it's not, going live on Twitter video to me. Well, not to me anyway. Maybe you would say differently. Love to hear your thoughts. So posting your updates on LinkedIn. Why is it important? LinkedIn, as we know, is the professional platform, and you have a real opportunity here to raise your profile, raise your head above the parapet, start conversations, and be strategic about this. So think about why you want to post on LinkedIn. What are the messages that you want to get across? What do you want people to know you for? So for example, today, I posted an update asking a question. So LinkedIn have started to recommend articles into the newsfeed, which I find really interesting. So for the people who have been plugging away writing articles, there are a lot of people who say that they just don't bother because they don't think they get the same views on LinkedIn. But if LinkedIn as a platform are now going to recommend your articles into the newsfeed, it might be something you would think again about. So the last update I posted before recording this was, have you had an article recommended to you by LinkedIn? A friend of mine had posted about it yesterday. And I said, I've been recommended an article about China and the global economy. Now, I've been to China. I went to China in 2002. I want to say 2002. And I did a sponsored cycle around Beijing province to raise money for MenCap, which is a charity for people with learning difficulties. And it was the most amazing experience. A long, long time ago. I had to cycle 400 kilometers in, I think, 6 days, if I remember right. So I did a lot of training for it. I remember one day we had to do 2 hill climbs straight after each other, which were 8 kilometers long. And I thought that day was never going to end. It was brutal, absolutely brutal. But I did it, and it was such a sense of achievement. I've completely diverted into we talk about China now. It was actually that trip to China. I came back from that trip to China, and I said to my then fiance, Jermud, do you know what? We need to go traveling. And we handed in our notice to our jobs about 6 months later, and off we went around the world. But anyway, that's my interest in China. Am I interested in China and the global economy? Well, possibly when I'm reading the Sunday papers, but not really when I'm on LinkedIn and building my professional network. So why did it recommend that article to me? I don't know. So it's not quite hitting the mark for me, but it's interesting to see if they're going to start suggesting articles into our newsfeed. Then I said, have you written an article on LinkedIn recently? Have you had one recommended to you by LinkedIn? And if you thought LinkedIn was going to start promoting your article, would this encourage you to write one? So far, I've had one reaction, 102 views of my post in the feed, okay? So nobody's actually replying to me, even though I have written a post as a conversation starter. I've asked questions and nobody has actually replied yet. So what you normally do is you want to, when you post an update, you want to ask a question to spark conversation in your feed. And it just takes one person to reply, and then it kicks off a lot of other responses. I have to say, interestingly, your post, a post like this on LinkedIn will have a lifespan of maybe 2 or 3 days. So there will be posts that I put up and people will still be responding to them a couple of days later. So it's not like your posts on Facebook where they're kind of gone in 4 hours. Your posts on LinkedIn have a longer shelf life. So I fully expect to get some people responding to this. I would say I know there's a practice on LinkedIn, and I did this myself for a while when I first started, of joining messaging threads, which are set up for people who, when you post on LinkedIn, you share it into your messaging thread, and the people in your messaging thread, or your LinkedIn pod, it might be called, will all go then and comment under your post. There's multiple reasons why I stopped doing this. Number one, I want to create content that people are interested in and want to respond to because they find it interesting, rather than some sense of obligation because we're in a let's all scratch each other's back situation. That's one reason. I want my content to stand on its own 2 feet. And if people aren't interested in it, then I need to go back to the drawing board and think about what do my audience actually want to hear about. The other reason is because I don't necessarily want to just comment on other people who are in the same messaging thread or messaging chat as me. And what happened was when I did do this about a year ago. I did this for a little while. And so when I went to LinkedIn, every time I went to LinkedIn, all the posts that popped up in my feed were from the people who were in my messaging chat and nobody else. Because it was kind of like falsifying the algorithm, if you like, or tricking the algorithm, in that LinkedIn thought that those were the posts I was most interested in and the people I was most interested in. So that was really all I saw. So I was really missing out on connecting with potential customers and clients, because the people in the messaging thread with me, although they were really nice and some of their stuff I would still see, and I would actually just leave genuine comments on, but they weren't going to be my customers necessarily, and they weren't going to be my clients, and I didn't think they were going to refer me work. So it just all seemed a bit, false is not the right word, but just a bit inauthentic for me. So I gradually dropped out of commenting at all. And then I actually got booted out of one of the groups, which is totally fine. So anyway, that's a way some people kick off the comments on their posts. I did do it for a while. I put my hands up and say I did do it for a while, and it probably got me started really looking at engaging more on LinkedIn, but I don't do it anymore. What I do is I put my post up, I ask questions, and I add in 3 hashtags on each post. The recommended number of hashtags by LinkedIn is 3, and more than that, I don't think gets as much share into the feed. Okay. So when I talked earlier about LinkedIn recommending articles into your newsfeed, it will also show posts under the hashtags that you follow. So when you go to LinkedIn, you will see posts from your network. It will see suggested articles. If LinkedIn themselves have posted an article, you might see that. I'm starting to see a lot more company pages in my feed, interestingly. And the hashtags I'm following, I will also see posts under those hashtags. So as with everything, you want to be a bit strategic about what you're posting on here. You want to start conversations about what it is that you are an expert in. One really handy way to get into the habit of doing this is if you create your content once a week, whether it is a podcast or whether it is a blog post, or whether it is a video, by sharing those consistently into your newsfeed and starting a conversation around that post. That's a great way of getting into the habit of doing it. So doing that once a week would just get you started. And if you're like me and you get into LinkedIn, you actually then get really into the conversations in there and connecting with your network, and it's really fun. Since I started writing for Social Media Examiner, I have had a lot more people connecting with me in my network, and for the first time ever, I'm being a lot more selective about who I accept into my network, because I'm really aware that I want to have conversations with the other people in my network. And if I'm accepting everybody that sends me a network connection request, I'm not going to be able to see the posts from the people that I'm really interested in. So being a lot more selective about that. And to be honest, so many people are reaching out and saying connect to your network and not actually personalizing the invitation that I don't even know where they've come from. Some of them I've clicked on our connections in common to see how has this person even found me? Never mind, are they actually going to be interested in having conversations with me? So being a lot more selective about that. I still do have over 3,000 in my network, which I think is a little bit too many, but that's where we are at the minute. And I am making a point of scrolling through the newsfeed and looking for my connections that I want to actually stay in touch with and commenting on their posts. So even if you aren't prepared to create your own status update on LinkedIn, at least get on there and start leaving comments on your network's posts. Remember, when you do that, the person who sees that post and the comment will see your headline, and your headline is going to lead them, if they're interested in what you do, to click on your profile and find out more about you. So if you would like help setting up your profile, please do get in touch. I do profile reviews. I have different options. I do one where I'll review your profile, and then we have a 30-minute call to go through the profile and the recommendations and talk a little bit about LinkedIn strategy. And I also do, if you don't have the time for that, I also do a LinkedIn profile review where I record myself walking through your profile and making suggestions, and also send you through some notes on updates and changes I would make to that. So that is something you're interested in. There'll be a link on how to work with me in the show notes, or just go to socialbni.com/work-with-me and let me help you in the very first instance get your profile spruced up so that when you're ready to start posting updates,